Good morning, Acadiana. It's Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021, and you're listening to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media in partnership with the Acadiana Advocate. Their team of journalists print the stories important to our community and state, and we are happy to read you some of those stories. You can hear Local News Live Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on AOC Community Media channel on YouTube, on AOC One on cable, and on Cypress Street Radio at aocinc.org/CS Radio. You can find the print versions of these stories and more at theadvocate.com. We couldn't bring you this community service without the generosity of our volunteer newsreaders. Today, I'll be your volunteer reader. My name is Matt Roberts. All right, so getting right into the Acadiana headlines this morning. This has been really hard. Some in Acadiana with disabilities out of work as demand for Mardi Gras beads plummets. Stories by Megan Wyatt. Some Acadiana residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities rely on Mardi Gras festivities for far more than a good time. They depend on the parades for their full-time, year-round income. Normally, they sort through donated beads, organize them by length and style, and prepare them for resale along with other parade throws. That's come to a standstill during the pandemic. Since COVID, we've cut back on those positions, said Carthy Guillet, job development manager for LARC. And our highest priority is our individuals. This gives them a job. They're paid to work at the bead store, and a lot of our clients depend on that to live, just like you and I. LARC is a nonprofit that supports about 300 people with disabilities through community engagement, education, and employment services. The organization also owns and operates Acadian Village, the annual Christmas light display and fair that the village brings in the bulk of LARC's funding, but the coronavirus resulted in significantly fewer sponsorships and attendance at the 2020 Noël au Village. Now, with Mardi Gras parades canceled or significantly scaled back, LARC is missing out on its second largest funding source. The pandemic has caused 99.9% of our bead sales to be impacted, Guillet said. We're normally open late, and on Saturdays, right now, we normally get people from New Orleans and all over, not just Lafayette. This has been really hard, she said. LARC typically sells about 10,000 bags of recycled beads per year. Each bag contains 36 to 244 beads, depending on the size and style. The sales bring in about $120,000 to $160,000 each year for the nonprofit. Not only is LARC selling far fewer beads through its Mardi Gras Beads and More store this year, the organization also anticipates receiving virtually no donated beads from the community during the pandemic. People typically donate beads and other throws to the nonprofit through a variety of ways. Schools and businesses host bead drives. Beads donated to Goodwill go to LARC. A truck with I-49 towing and recovery follows each parade in Lafayette to catch unwanted throws for the nonprofit. All of that is gone, Guillet said. Typically, 11 people work full-time at the Beads and More store throughout the year. That number has dropped to just 5 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee. The workers earn a paycheck and learn skills that can translate to other jobs in the community. It helps them be employable. They are learning skills, Guillet said. Some people might wonder what sorting beads really means, but that can go over into washing dishes in a kitchen where dishes must be sorted a specific way. They're also learning soft skills, how to be on time, when it's appropriate to take breaks, how to continue working without supervision, how to take feedback from a supervisor. All those things we take for granted, but they're vital skills in any job, she said. LARC partners with about a dozen companies in the community to place workers with disabilities at appropriate positions for their skills and abilities. Those positions have also been impacted by the pandemic, especially last spring during the shutdown. In addition to job training and placement, the nonprofit provides low-cost social outings and life skills training on topics such as how to grocery shop and budget money. LARC also operates a residential group homes with support staff. About 200 people come through the nonprofit in some way each day, with about 100 more encountering LARC less frequently through other services. Quote, "It is a very rewarding job," Giet said. "The little things can be so successful for them, and in turn you feel successful too. This is the most rewarding job I've ever had," she said. Although many individuals and businesses are hurting from the pandemic's economic effect, the community has answered Lark's call for help. On Saturday, a reverse Mardi Gras parade will take place at Rise Chiropractic in Broussard to bring in beads for the nonprofit. People are encouraged to decorate their vehicles and throw bead donations to the business while enjoying music and Mardi Gras decor. The event will take place from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at Rise Chiropractic, 805B Albertsons Parkway. The business will also be accepting bead donations at its office throughout the Mardi Gras season. On Mardi Gras Day, Cafe Habana City is hosting a benefit for Lark by donating a portion of its proceeds from the sale of Cuban sandwiches to the nonprofit. Quote, "The community has been absolutely wonderful," Giat said. "As they've learned about what's happening, they've been coming by or calling the office to offer help. It's a wonderful thing," she said. And up next in business news in the Acadiana area, grocery store slated for Jefferson Boulevard by Adam Daigle, Acadiana's business editor. A Monroe pharmacist who has businesses in cities across the state, including one opening soon in New Orleans, will open a grocery store in the area of Lafayette that lacks access to food. Dr. Richard Japney, who recently purchased Matassa's Market on the edge of the French Quarter, will open a Lafayette store at 616 Jefferson Boulevard in the former Jefferson Drug Store building, said Adrian Nagy, a business consultant for the project. The 4,500 square foot store will offer fresh vegetables and whole grains in an area that is, quote, "is between two food desert areas in Lafayette," Nagy said. Quote, "When you look at it, it's probably a mile or a half mile residents have low access to fresh fruits and whole grains," she said. The store will occupy the former drugstore and the Louisiana consultant space next door. The remaining space will be occupied by an independent pharmacist, she said. A groundbreaking will be held in the spring, and the store is expected to open early next year. It will have the equivalent of 14 full-time employees, she said. A groundbreaking will be held this spring, and the store is expected to open early next year. It will have the equivalent of 14 full-time employees, she said. Japney is a native of Cameroon who moved to the United States at age 14, opened his first pharmacy in Lafayette, and owns pharmacies and grocery stores in Alexandria, Monroe, Shreveport, and St. Francisville, Nagy said. Japney bought the building and lot in December 2019 from Robertson Properties Land Records show. And up next in our Louisiana, or our Acadiana headlines, I should say, initiative aims to make UL greener. University pivots to reusable plastic food containers. And this is a staff report from the Advocate staff. In an effort to become more sustainable, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette has replaced disposable to-go containers with reusable plastic ones at its dining facilities. The reusable hard plastic containers hold takeout meals from UL's Café Fleur de Lis, Cypress Lake Dining Hall, and Lagniappe Cafe. They are part of the Good to Go initiative being coordinated by the university's Office of Sustainability and Campus Dining Services. Good to Go is expected to keep about 225,000 disposable plastic containers out of waste streams each year, a significant stride in the university's campus-wide push to produce zero waste, said Gretchen Lacombe Vanacore, director of the UL Office of Sustainability. The efforts underscore environmental objectives enumerated in UL's Sustainability Strategic Plan. The plan calls for reusing recycled or composting trash. The campus will benefit from Good to Go as much as the ecosystem, said Monica Rowand, the university's sustainability coordinator. Quote, the reusable containers will reduce the amount of trash that ends up in bins, which will reduce waste management services costs. As part of the program, students with meal plans receive one free container. Diners without meal plans can purchase their first container for $4.99. After meals, empty containers are deposited into what Rowan describes as reverse vending machines. In exchange, they get a non-monetary token that they redeem for another container before their next meal, she explained. Containers retrieved from the receptacles will be thoroughly washed and sanitized in industrial-grade dishwashers. We're encouraging people to return containers immediately after they eat to prevent inundating dining services staff at peak meal times and reduce the likelihood containers will get lost or broken, Rowan said. Machines for returning containers are at 5 locations. Cypress Lake Dining Hall and Lagniappe Cafe and the UL Student Union each have one. Cafe Fleur de Lis near Legacy Park Apartments has a third machine. The Ragin' Cajun's food court in Agnes Edwards Hall and the Cox Communications Athletic Complex also have machines. Dining halls aren't the only spots on campus where eco-friendliness is on the menu. During the 2018 football season, fans at home games began eating from reusable containers and biodegradable plates using wooden forks, spoons, and knives. The shift marked the latest gain in the university's zero-waste efforts at Cajun Field, a move that also saw composting added to existing recycling efforts. The efforts mean as much as 75% of the recyclable and compostable materials recovered after football games are now diverted from landfills, Vanacore says. Recovered materials go to facilities for recycling and to the university's 600-acre experimental farm near Cade for conversion to compost that's used to fertilize campus greenery. Materials also, in some cases, end up as outdoor seats. Discarded ice bags and cling wrap are sent to a company that makes park benches from the plastics. Finding creative ways to convert waste into resources are central to responsible environmental stewardship, a role that the university remains committed to for the betterment of our campus and community, Vanacore said. And in a little break from our headlines, we've got a PSA here, a public service announcement. United Way of Acadiana announces its 2021 PACT United Plan of Action for Community Transformation grant applications are now open. Organizations are encouraged to apply on their website before February 23rd at midnight. PACT United is a competitive community-wide initiative focused on United Way of Acadiana's 3 focus areas of education, earnings, and essentials. Last year, $440,000 were distributed among 28 community programs created and administered by regional nonprofits and educational institutions. Through the program, UWA, or United Way of Acadiana, lifts up local area nonprofits by giving them additional resources for support, growth, and sustainability. United Way of Acadiana's Pact United model provides grants to organizations focused on helping more children graduate from high school, building financial stability in hardworking families, and ensuring that neighbors meet their basic needs. United Way of Acadiana expects this year's need to be great in wake of COVID-19 and encourages organizations who are stepping up during this time to apply. To apply for the Pact United grant or for more information on United Way of Acadiana's work, visit unitedwayofacadiana.org. And continuing on with our Acadiana headlines, the Lafayette Library Board fires back. President defends rejection of voting rights grant, by Claire Taylor, a staff writer with The Advocate. The fallout continued Monday after Lafayette Parish Public Library Board of Control rejected a grant to fund books and a discussion about the history of voting rights. Board President Doug Palumbo said in a news release Monday that the grant was rejected because the library director did not find a conservative facilitator to counter the speakers they deemed, quote, far left. The board's directive was to find facilitators from each side of the aisle to fairly represent opposing positions on the current controversial voting issues in the program, such as voter ID laws, voter rights of felons, and the Electoral College, Palumbo said in the prepared statement. Palumbo did not return messages Monday requesting an interview. The Acadiana Advocate was first to report on Friday that the board voted 5-2 at its January 25 meeting to reject a $2,700 loan Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities grant on who gets to vote, quote. When one board member said she has to represent her conservative constituents and another said residents don't support the library because it has become too political. Quote, the series developed by the LEH is intended to engage members of the general public in conversations on the history of voting and efforts to suppress the vote in the United States, according to the grant application. One of the books, Bending Toward Justice by Gary May, is about the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Another is Vanguard, How Black Women Broke Barriers, Won the Vote, and Insisted on Equality for All by Martha S. Jones. The facilitators would have been Chris Edelson, assistant professor in the government department at American University in Washington, D.C., and Theodore Foster, an assistant professor of African American history at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Library director Teresa Elberson, who was with the library system more than 38 years, retired suddenly Friday in the wake of clashes with the board. The board rejected the grant because Elberson, quote, disregarded the board's clear directive requiring her to secure 2 facilitators from opposing political sides for the program, according to the Monday news release. In December, the news release states, quote, seeing that some of the more current topics to be covered in the program were political and potentially controversial in nature, the board re-emphasized its goal to ensure that the library as a government agency should remain a politically neutral or apolitical entity. Elberson, board members learned at the January 25th meeting, instead instructed her staff to contact the 2 facilitators that were already selected and advise them of the board's concern. Quote, the board regrets that the director chose to disregard our very clear and reasonable directive, Palumbo said in the release. Quote, had she simply honored the board's wishes, I do believe the grant would have been approved unanimously. Instead, he said, both of the college professors she submitted as facilitators were clearly from the same side of the political debate. This board is determined to bring political neutrality back to our library system. It is a government institution that belongs to all Lafayette Parish residents, and as such, it should never even appear to favor one political view over another, end quote. Rick Swanson, a professor of political science at UL Lafayette, asked Monday what's the, quote, other side the board wants presented. Quote, that democracy is bad? That voting rights are bad? He asked. That black people or other ethnic minorities should be denied the right to vote because of their skin color? Do they want someone to present the view of past or present segregationist/white supremacist, he said? Or merely that there is no such thing as any voting discrimination or voter suppression that is occurring anymore today on the basis of race, he asked. But even if it's the latter case, he said, why are they then also blocking the education or discussion about past voting discrimination and or the lingering effects that the past discrimination still has on society today? I would love to hear a precise explanation from them. I can't imagine an explanation that is anything other than highly troubling from both an educational and a civic standpoint, Swanson concluded. Some groups, including Lafayette's Stand Black organization and the Louisiana National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, are planning to show up at the next library board meeting at 5:15 p.m. February 15th at the main library downtown to express their displeasure. Quote, Louisiana has a repugnant history of manipulating the truth of racism and bigotry, said Jamal Taylor, co-founder of Stand Black and chair of the Education Committee of the Louisiana NAACP, in a statement. He said, we will not continue to sit silently while a small contingent of racists and bigots perpetuate conspiracy theories. And continuing with our Acadiana headlines, up next, sheriff says a woman died protecting her daughter from hired killers. Victim's brother and two others booked in double murder in Terrebonne. This is by Megan Wyatt. Brittany Cormier is remembered as both a private person and the life of the party. Above all else, though, she is remembered for being a devoted and loving mother. Samantha Lemaire, a close friend, said she never expected Cormier to sacrifice her life to protect her daughter. Quote, she would do anything for her kids, Lemaire said, but to this extent, I would have never thought it would have ever come down to this. Lemaire is referring to the horrific circumstances surrounding her friend's death, which Lemaire learned of a few days before a Monday news conference on the topic. Beau Cormier, Brittany's brother and a convicted sex offender, from Kaplan hired two men to kill his niece, who he is accused of raping, in order to prevent his victim from testifying in court, according to Terrebonne Parish Sheriff Tim Saunier. Brittany Cormier, 34, who was shot and killed after telling the men that she was her daughter, which Saunier said likely saved the life of the actual rape victim. The two men, 25-year-old Andrew Eskeen of Carencrow and 22-year-old Dalvin Wilson of Rain, also killed a neighbor, 37-year-old Hope Nettleton, who tried to fight off the men, the sheriff said. Beau Cormier, Eskeen, and Wilson have been booked into the Terrebonne Parish Criminal Justice Complex on 2 counts of first-degree murder. Bond has been set at $2 million for each man. Officials say they are working to increase the bonds. Acadiana law enforcement agencies were integral to the arrest made in the January 13th murders at 103 Montagut Street in Terrebonne Parish, according to Saunier. Quote, it's all gone west since we started investigating this case, Saunier said in a phone interview Monday afternoon. We knew there was a pending, pretty solid rape case there, which provided motive, he said. Saunier said investigators determined that Beau Cormier, 35, of Kaplan, paid his friends to murder the person he is accused of raping. Beau Cormier traveled with Eskeen and Wilson to Montagut prior to the January 13th incident to do surveillance on the home, Sonnier said. The men also attempted to murder the rape victim on another occasion prior to January 13th, the sheriff said. During the investigation, Eskeen and Wilson eventually confessed and named Beau Cormier as the person who hired them to carry out the murder. Beau Cormier, whose rape case is working through the court system in Vermilion Parish, was also convicted of another sex crime in 2004. Sonnier said there has only ever been one other murder-for-hire case like this in Terrebonne Parish, and it was long before he began his law enforcement career 15 years ago. We've had double homicides. That's not so significant, Sonnier said. They're all bad and horrible, but with a murder for hire, there's always a motive for someone to want to kill somebody like that. It doesn't happen very often, and it's usually pretty hard trying to piece those together, he said. Those touched by the violent crime have also been trying to piece things together. Through tears, Lemaire said she didn't have the opportunity to tell Brittany Cormier about her recent engagement or ask her best friend to be in her wedding party. Quote, "She was like a big sister I never had," Lemaire said. "She would have been my maid of honor. She was pretty much like the life of the party in her own funny, unique type of way. She made you love her, and she never judged anybody." The two women met about 11 years ago when Brittany Cormier was dating Lemaire's uncle. Even after the romantic relationship ended, the women remained close. Brittany Cormier was godmother to Lemaire's 7-year-old daughter and 11-year-old son. Lemaire said her friend was always great with children, including her own. Lemaire said she isn't sure what Brittany and Beau Cormier's relationship was like. "I'm really not too sure about her relationship with Beau," Lemaire said. "Brittany hardly ever talked about him, like hardly ever," she said. Brittany Cormier's daughter and stepdaughter were hidden in a closet when their mother was shot to death, according to Lemaire and Sonnier. Quote, "Maybe they hid in the closet because they were scared," Lemaire said, "but I like to think she locked them in the closet to protect them." For a little break from the headlines for this morning, we're going to go to our mid-show routine of giving you some Today in History facts as presented by the Associated Press and The Advocate. Today is Tuesday, February 2nd, the 33rd day of 2021. There are 332 days left in the year. Today's highlight in history: on February 2nd, 1990, in a dramatic concession to South Africa's black majority, President F.W. de Klerk lifted a ban on the African National Congress and promised to free Nelson Mandela. On this date in 1913, New York City's rebuilt Grand Central Terminal officially opened to the public at 1 minute past midnight. In 1914, on this day, Charles Chaplin made his movie debut as the comedy short Making a Living was released by Keystone Film Company. In 1925, on this date, the legendary Alaska Serum Run ended as the last of a series of dog mushers brought a life-saving treatment to Nome, the scene of diphtheria epidemic, 6 days after the drug left Nanana. In 1943, the remainder of Nazi forces from the Battle of Stalingrad surrendered in a major victory for the Soviets in World War II. In 1980, NBC News reported the FBI had conducted a sting operation targeting members of Congress using phony Arab businessmen in what became known as Abscam, a code name protested by Arab Americans. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan pressed his case for additional aid to the Nicaraguan Contras, a day ahead of a vote by the U.S. House of Representatives. The three major broadcast TV networks declined to carry the speech, which was covered by CNN. A divided House voted to reject Reagan's request for $36.2 million in new aid. In 2002, inside the World Economic Forum in New York, foreign economic leaders criticized the United States for protectionist policies, while outside, thousands of protesters demonstrated against global capitalism. In 2006, House Republicans elected John Boehner of Ohio as their new majority leader to replace the indicted Tom DeLay. Tornadoes tore through New Orleans neighborhoods that had been hit hard by Hurricane Katrina 5 months earlier. 10 years ago, supporters of President Hosni Mubarak charged into Cairo's central square on horses and camels brandishing whips, while others rained firebombs from rooftops in what appeared to be an orchestrated assault against protesters trying to topple Egypt's leader of 30 years. 5 years ago, health officials reported that a person in Texas had become infected with the Zika virus through sex, in the first case of the illness being transmitted within the United States. A suicide bomber detonated an explosive aboard a Somali Airbus, forcing it to make an emergency landing at Mogadishu's international airport. Only the bomber was killed. 1 year ago, the Philippines reported that a 44-year-old Chinese man from Wuhan had died in a Manila hospital from the new coronavirus. It was the first death from the virus to be recorded outside of China. The United States recorded its 9th known case, a woman in the San Francisco area who'd recently traveled to Wuhan. And today's celebrity birthdays: comedian Tom Smothers is 84, rock singer guitarist Graham Nash is 79, television executive Barry Diller is 79, actor Bo Hopkins is 77, country singer Howard Bellamy of the Bellamy Brothers is 75, TV chef Ina Garten is 73, actor Jack McGee is 72, actor Brent Spiner, Data from Star Trek The Next Generation, is 72. Rock musician Ross Valerie of Journey is 72. Senator John Cornyn, Republican of Texas, is 69. The former president of South Korea, Park Geun-hye, is 69. Model Christy Brinkley is 67. Actor Michael Talbot is 66. Actor Kim Zimmer is 66. Actor Michael T. Weiss is 59. Actor-comedian Adam Ferrara is 55. Rock musician Robert DeLeo, Army of Anyone and Stone Temple Pilots, is 55. Actor Jennifer Westfeldt is 51. Rapper Timo is 49. Actor Marissa Jared Winocour is 48. Actor Lori Beth Denberg is 45. Singer Shakira is 44. Actor Rich Sommer is 43, and country singer Blaine Larson is 35. And if you're looking for predictions or advice, take this with a grain of salt. Here is your zodiac. Aquarius. Take care of your financial, medical, and legal matters before they have a chance to escalate. Let your instincts lead the way. You must find out who's on your side and who isn't. Pisces. Use your intuition and creative mind to push forward. Make changes that will help you get ahead. Let go of what no longer works for you. Choose a positive path. Aries. You will be right on target. Your insight and ability to take control and get things done will be impressive. How you handle others will pay off. Taurus, uncertainty will prevail if you make a premature move. Consider every angle before you forge ahead with plans that can affect your income. When in doubt, talk to an expert. Gemini, you'll be offered insight that can help you make an important decision. Added discipline will pay off when putting together a proposal or taking advantage of an opportunity that comes your way. Cancer, don't flirt with temptation. An attraction to something or someone will put you at a disadvantage if you are too friendly or accommodating. Take a wait-and-see approach. Leo, handle professional matters and partnerships with discretion. Making an impromptu move or decision will set you back. Nature Nurture essential relationships to avoid a falling out. Virgo, do whatever it takes to arm yourself with the necessary information, skills, and experience to follow your dreams. Take responsibility for your happiness. It's up to you to make things happen. Libra, don't procrastinate. Opportunities are available. All you have to do is take action. Speak up, share your ideas, and engage in stimulating conversation. Scorpio, keep your thoughts and plans secret. Don't give anyone ammunition that will set you back or interfere with your life. Work under the radar until you have everything in place. Sagittarius, reach out to people who can help you bring about positive change. An opportunity to raise your earning potential or start a new career looks inviting. And Capricorns, take a back seat and listen carefully. The information offered will help you make adjustments at home to improve your performance, but roommates, family, or friends aren't likely to be impressed. And of course, the horoscope is an entertainment feature. It's not based on scientific fact. Alright, and up next, we are going to bring you some state news. So up first in our state stories, our statewide coverage is schools slow to spend money from first stimulus. The $146 million unused in Louisiana 9 months after allocation. This story is by Will Sintel, a staff writer for The Advocate. More than half of the $287 million in federal stimulus money for Louisiana public schools to help defray pandemic expenses remains unspent 9 months after it was allocated. The wheels of a big system sometimes move slowly, said Wes Watts, president of the Louisiana Association of School Superintendents and superintendent of the West Baton Rouge Parish School District. The money is supposed to help with the cost of computers, personal protective equipment, summer school, and other expenses. It was approved by Congress on March 27, 2020, and started going to districts in late April. But the $146 million of the allocation remains unspent, according to the State Department of Education. State officials this week are sending messages to local superintendents, directors of federal programs, and business managers urging them not to delay spending the money and how it can be used. State Superintendent of Education Cade Brumley said the delay stems in part from earlier concerns among local officials. They were cautious on whether they would have to carry it into next year as well, Brumley said. They did not know that they would be getting additional dollars, he said. So they were thinking about how they could spread this out if they had to go into 2021, Brumley said. Now officials are faced with sort of an embarrassment of riches. Louisiana landed another $1.1 billion in federal aid, 13th most in the nation, when Congress approved its second stimulus plan on December 27th. However, the state is not sending out those dollars for now. Districts will be able to spend 50% of their allocation starting in June and the other half starting in January of 2022. Public school classrooms were closed in March 2020 during the early stages of the coronavirus pandemic. School leaders were forced to rely on distance learning for the rest of the school year with mixed results amid a shortage of computers and other devices and gaps in student access to the internet. Today, about 60% of students are getting in-person instruction, with the rest relying on virtual learning or a combination of virtual and in-person classes. Watts said how quickly districts have spent the first round of federal aid depends on their financial outlooks. The West Baton Rouge Parish School District has spent most of its roughly $900,000 in federal aid to ensure all of its 4,000 students have computers or other devices. The struggle with it is you can only use it for certain things, Watts says. Maybe they need teachers and you can't spend it on that. Watts also said that in some cases, districts have committed their share of federal stimulus money, but it has not been spent. Quote, "You're planning and implementing and payment does not happen until later," he said. Michael Falk, executive director of the Louisiana Association of School Superintendents, said local superintendents were reluctant to spend all the aid at once because of concerns about future needs. Now, with this second stimulus, you don't have a cushion because you're going to get a whole lot more, Falk said. Some of Louisiana's 69 school districts can expect 3 times what they got in the first round when the second round of aid, $1.1 billion, is made available. Jim Garvey, the longest-serving member of the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, said local school leaders are looking at 2 or 3 years of extra expenses because of the pandemic. Quote, in particular, the learning loss that happened or is currently happening during the last 12 months or 10 months will happen until the virus is under control, Garvey said. And the remediation of that learning loss is not going to happen in 6 months. He said, half of the second round of federal aid is set to go to districts in March, along with the guidance on how it can be used. Local districts will start crafting budgets for the money in April. State officials will review those plans in May, and the money will be available for spending in June. Brumley said the priority for our federal aid will be to ensure schools can offer in-person instruction. And up next in our state news, pellets washing up again in New Orleans. Groups renew calls for cleanup, penalties. This story is by Tristan Barrick, a staff writer for The Advocate. Almost 6 months after a cargo ship spilled millions of plastic pellets into the Mississippi River, large numbers of the pellets, known as nurdles, are again washing up on riverbanks in New Orleans. The reappearance of the tiny white nurdles is spurring another round of small-scale cleanups and calls for leaders to do something to prevent future spills. This was the cleanest beach in the state, said Scott Eustace, Community Science Director for the Healthy Gulf, while standing on the levee at Algiers Point on Monday. After several cleanups, most of them done by volunteers with buckets and hand tools, almost no nurdles were visible on the point's sandy batture. Quote, but on January 17th, there were fresh pellets. Every time the river rises and falls, we get a new swath here. Nurdles are lentil-sized raw material for a variety of plastic products, from water bottles to lawn furniture. When released into the environment, they can be mistaken for food by pets and wildlife. Malnourishment, damaged digestive systems, and other health problems have been caused by nurdle consumption. An estimated 743 million nurdles fell into the river on August 2nd after the CGM Bianca cargo ship broke from its moorings at the Napoleon Avenue Wharf during a storm. No cleanup orders or penalties have been issued by the U.S. Coast Guard or other government agencies. The Coast Guard, which typically leads river and marine pollution cleanups, has said it has no jurisdiction over the nurdles because they are not considered a hazardous material like oil or chemical waste under the Clean Water Act. The ship's operator, France-based CMA CGM Group, voluntarily hired a small cleanup crew a few weeks after the spill, but most of the nurdles had disappeared by then, eventually popping up in South Plaquemine Parish and as far as Elmer's Island and the Grand Isle on the Louisiana coast. CMA CGM has declined to comment on the spill. All we have is a gentleman's agreement for cleanup, and it's totally inadequate, said Jeff Dorson, director of the Humane Society of Louisiana, which has been organizing volunteer cleanups. The crew CMA CGM employs is small and equipped with brooms, butterfly nets, and other hand tools. Quote, we've got 7 guys with brush brooms for millions of pellets unaccounted for, Eustace said. Seasonal river changes, as opposed to another accident, are likely behind the new crop of nurdles washing up in the New Orleans area in recent weeks, said Mark Benfield, an LSU oceanographer and plastic pollution expert. The rising Mississippi, which swelled to 10.5 feet at the Carrollton gauge on January 15th, had fallen to just under 5 feet on Monday, is likely dislodging nurdles that were embedded in the riverbank or trapped among rocks and plants after the August 2nd spill. Quote, "The rising river has basically remobilized the nurdles," he said, "and the fact that we're seeing them in New Orleans means these new ones are coming from close to the spill site. The river's heavier flows may also be ripping open larger sacks of nurdles that were never recovered from the river's bottom or its banks," Eustace said. Benfield hasn't analyzed the new nurdles in his lab, but their shape and color is consistent with the ones that spilled from the Bianca. Most of the nurdles are concentrated in the lines of driftwood, trash, and other debris at the river's edge. Some areas have hundreds of nurdles per square foot. That's nowhere near the heaps that blanketed the riverbank near the French Quarter and Crescent Park in August, but still a concern for the dogs, birds, and other wildlife that have been seen eating the nurdles. Pesticides, PCBs, and other pollutants easily adhere to nurdles and can be absorbed into animals through their stomachs. These harmful chemicals can move up the food chain from small fish to big fish and eventually to your dinner plate, Benfield said. The Humane Society, Healthy Gulf, and other groups are calling for tougher local, state, and federal rules to prevent nurdle spills, as well as fines for when they do happen. New Orleans lawyer Ivana Dillas is circulating an online petition with similar aims as of Monday. The petition had almost 33,000 signatures. So far, though, there's been little interest in the matter from local elected officials beyond New Orleans City Councilwoman Kristen Giselson Palmer, whose district includes Algiers Point. On Monday, she agreed to meet with the Humane Society and Healthy Gulf and consider drafting a resolution expressing support for their efforts. Healthy Gulf said legal action against CMA CGM is also being explored. "It's too late for this spill," Eustace said. "The rules must change and plastics manufacturing must be regulated better before we have more spills." Staff reporter Mark Scheffelstein contributed to this report. All right, and our last headline before we get to sports today. Experts say use caution when sharing news of receiving vaccine. Your cards contain personal data scammers can use. And this is by Ellen Couvillon, staff writer. Receiving the coronavirus vaccine can be a life-altering moment and even a reason to celebrate, but sharing too much information about shots online could cause issues keeping key information private. Health officials distribute cards to vaccine recipients as a reminder of which manufacturer made their dose and when they'll be ready for a second shot if appropriate. Already, many people have shared photos of their vaccine cards online. As the number of people vaccinated grows, the number of people likely to share the news through social media feeds grows too. Quote, "Most of our patients have been of the age where that's not something they're interested in doing," said Jean Bertrand, who, with her pharmacist husband Andrew Bertrand, owns Bertrand's Pharmacy in Gonzales. Many of the pharmacy's shot recipients are elderly. The Better Business Bureau on Monday warned that sharing photographs of the cards online could benefit scammers interested in identity theft. Carmen Million, president of the Better Business Bureau of South Central Louisiana based in Baton Rouge, said the concern is that people will want to show everybody they got the vaccine with a picture. Quote, "Be your first line of defense against scammers." The cards distributed initially by U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have a patient's full name and birthday on it, along with information about the pharmacy or other location where shots were distributed. If your social media privacy settings aren't set high, you may be giving valuable information away for anyone to use, the BBB said. The cards are important, said Jeremy Benny, a pharmacy manager for the Bocage Pharmacy Center in Baton Rouge. You cannot change the type of vaccine you get for the second shot, he said. If the original type of vaccine happens to not be available at the place where a person got their first shot, they'll need to find a place that has the appropriate type for their second dose, Benny said. Bertrand said, there is a reason for people to be excited about the vaccine. Quote, it means they're on their way to being able to do things again, she said. And in our sports headlines today, the Cajuns survived 2 nail-biters to lead the Sun Belt. Coach Marlin returns from quarantine on Wednesday. This story is by Kevin Foote, who is a staff writer for The Advocate. On paper, it wasn't the kind of game you'd like to be involved in without your head coach. UL's dramatic 74-73 road win over Texas State had 12 lead changes, and the game was also tied 12 times. Quote, the second half of the second game was like a prize fight punch-counterpunch, said the UL Director of Basketball Operations, Mike Murphy, filling in for head coach Bob Marlin, who is still in quarantine until Wednesday. Quote, it was a very exciting ending, coaches always say. Every possession counts, and that was no truer than what happened at Texas State on Saturday, he said. That's what made how the final seconds played out even more impressive for the Ragin' Cajuns, who moved to a 13-4 overall and 7-3 in Sunbelt play with the win. Trailing 73-72, senior guard Cedric Russell missed a jumper with 14 seconds left, but the ball was rebounded by teammate Malik Wilson to keep UL's hopes alive. Eventually, Russell drove to the basket, only to be called for the charge with 3 seconds left. Quote, we thought we had a good play design, Murphy said. Obviously, Cedric was the guy that had to have the ball. He's really good at getting the ball into the paint and getting the shot off against pressure. We knew he was going to have the ball. They knew he was going to have the ball, and they loaded the paint, and they took a charge. Right call, wrong call, it doesn't matter. They took the charge. The call was made, they said. Still, UL's bench didn't panic. Murphy said, as bad a break as the call was, everybody was very positive. I thought the staff did a really good job of maintaining composure and discipline and communicating to the players what needed to be done, they said. The plan was to deny an inbounds pass to get a 5-second call. What they got was even better than that. Indeed, the inbounds pass went right to the Cajuns' sophomore Devin Butts, who laid it in with a 0.4 seconds left to give the Cajuns the unlikely win. Murphy insisted Marlin's influence still played a big role in the sweep despite not making the trip. Quote, Coach was in daily contact with the staff via Zoom, he said. He was in daily contact with the players, so even though he wasn't there physically, his handprint was all over the game plan. I thought the players and the staff did a great job of executing that. Marlin is expected to return Wednesday. Despite the charging call spoiling his potential game winner, Russell was honored as the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Week after scoring 21 points Friday and 24 in Saturday's win. Quote, he's done a great job, Murphy said of Russell. He's a senior, he's been around a long time, he's played a lot of basketball. Said is a fairly quiet individual, he really keeps to himself. The players really respect what he does. The staff knows that they can count on him to be there when it's needed. He wants the ball in his hands when your best is required. That's a special thing. Not a lot of athletes want to do that. Some run from it, he doesn't. He's been able to be productive. It's really a pleasure to see him having this success. The 1-point win gave UL its first 3-game winning streak in one-possession games since beating Texas Pan American, New Orleans, and ULM in 1984. Murphy is hoping the experience in nail-biters will pay off down the stretch. That stretch begins at 6 p.m. Friday at Arkansas State in Jonesboro. We're happy to be in first place on February the 1st, but our goal is to be in first place on March 1st, Murphy said. That will be a challenge. All right, and before we end today, we'd like to announce the funerals happening today in the Acadiana area. Edwin Broussard. Services will be held at St. John the Evangelist Catholic Church at 11 a.m. Jeffrey Clement at St. John Lutheran Church in Iota at 2 p.m. today. Floyd Corville, services at St. Jules Catholic Church at 116 St. Jules Street, Lafayette, Louisiana at 10 a.m. Then Alvin Primo, the St. John the Baptist Catholic Church, Lions Point at 10 a.m. This has been Local News Live for February 2nd, 2021. I've been your reader, Matt Roberts. You can join us 9 a.m. Monday through Friday on AOC 1, Cypress Street Radio, or the AOC Community Media channel on YouTube. You can read these stories and more at theadvocate.com and find out how to volunteer and more at aocinc.org. You can find all sorts of information if you want to start a podcast, if you want to start a TV show, if you want to have your own radio show. That's what AOC Community Media is all about, in addition to providing you community services like these, the reading of The Advocate. So thanks again to everybody who joined us this morning. Have a great day.